Okay, welcome back to the Mindpositivo podcast. My name is Biagio, and as always, I get to speak to some fantastic and amazing individuals. And today's no different. I'm joined by Elisabetta Mancani, and she comes to us all the way from Italy, and she joins us. Elisabetta is a certified professional neuro language coach with a unique approach to teaching Italian language combined with neuroscience coaching to boost confidence and speed up the learning process. She helps thousands of people every week on YouTube and LinkedIn. And she joins me today. Elisabetta, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Biagio. It's a pleasure to be here with you
It's
today.
fantastic and appreciate you taking the time to join us. So, as I said, you come to us all the way from Italy, which there it's
Yes.
AM at the moment, we're PM. But how did your journey start with the whole language teaching for the Italian language side of things?
Sure. Well, it started when I moved to Spain, when I was 21 years old. And I started there to work with Spanish people to help them learn the language. And then when I came back to Italy, I decided to do the same thing. I started with migrants, so I helped them. And sometimes I worked with asylum seekers, so people who could not really write in Italian, read. So very difficult situation. I helped them. And when those courses ended, I felt like it was time to branch out and start something new to set up on my own. And that's when I decided to do it by myself. Basically. So I help people, adults who want to learn Italian or improve their Italian. And I work with people from all around the world.
Okay, that's fantastic. And the individuals you teach from around the world, as I said, you have a YouTube channel and LinkedIn as well.
Yep.
Are they mainly people that don't know the language at all? I know you mentioned migrants and other cultures and stuff. Do you have many that have no connection with the Italian language at all, but want to say from America or even Australia that want to go and live in Italy and learn the language?
Well, some of them, but most of them really have some Italian under their belt. So they just want to improve. Because nowadays, you can learn many things. You have apps, you have YouTube channels, many content, a lot of content you can find online. The problem is, usually people learn Italian passively. So they know passively, but when it's time to speak, they freeze. They are afraid. They don't want to make mistakes. They are afraid of what other people are going to say. And that's what I do. I really help them. And sometimes it's a mindset shift that you need. You really have to change the way you see yourself. You have to go from being a student to being a person who uses the language. So I help them with that as well. There is a huge component of mindset in this, in learning a language.
Yeah, and I was in the introduction, I said it's a neuroscience approach. What does that actually mean for those that don't
Of
understand?
course. Sure, sure. So neuro language coaching means using neuroscience and coaching into the learning process. So we know how the brain works. We know how it's the best way to learn. So I use some techniques in the process to help people. For example, it is very important that people are calm when they learn. And on the other side, it is important to do something that works for that person. So this is a very personalized approach. So I tailor a custom path for each person who comes to me. I see what they want to achieve, where they are at, what are the gaps in their knowledge, and based from there, we craft a personalized journey for that person. So that's how it works. Because, traditional teaching is sometimes there is a fixed curriculum. The teacher goes through the curriculum, whether you need that curriculum or not, and it's the same path for everyone. Well, I believe that each brain is different. Each person is different. What works for you might not work for another person, and what works for another person might not work for you. So that's why it is possible, I want to say that, to learn a language at any age. I really saw people at 80 years old. I have some clients who are 80 years old and they are learning the language. Younger people, they can do it as well. It is possible. You have to find the best way for you, what works for you.
Yeah, yeah. Now that makes sense because I mean, in general, the educational system at the moment is being looked it's a system. It's not customized, and when everything's customized,
Exactly.
it's a lot better. I think before we jumped on to the interview, I shared a little bit about how I learned my Italian. I'm not 100%
Yes.
perfect, but it was
Okay.
just by listening to others that were speaking to my parents, as I said to you, and
Sure.
that as a child it absorbed in. But I just want to share something with you. When I did 1 year at school, here we don't have it's compulsory Italian or any
Hmm.
language. You just
Yep.
do 1 year. I did one
Hmm.
year, and as you said, it was the generic. This is what you got to read. You're going to learn. This is how you
Okay.
got to speak it. All that. Did all that
Hmm.
good. But the issue was I come from a dialect background,
Hmm.
and the teacher was from, let's say, proper Italian Romana, the
Hmm.
way, and occasionally, being a little Calabrese boy, I would
Hmm.
let go of a dialect word.
Oh,
That would
that's
trigger
amazing.
that would trigger the teacher completely.
Really?
Yeah, and
Why?
so I'm hoping that that approach has changed. But what you're talking about is totally
Sure.
different. Would be
Yeah.
perfect for anyone who wants to learn it.
Of course, why not? I think dialect, by the way, is something very special in the Italian language. It's something rich about the language. So I would encourage, if I had somebody who speaks dialect, to see the differences. For example, how do you say that in the local dialect? Oh, let's see how it changes in Italian. That's beautiful. Can you remember some other expressions that you heard? I think it's something to preserve. I mean, it's important to have it. So I would encourage to use that as well. Why not? By the way, we are losing dialects right now in Italy, and it's
Right.
a shame because it's something that makes unique if we want Italy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
And
would say
I
that.
mean, I don't know 100% because I don't know the history of it, but
Yep.
some people have told me that the dialects are actual languages of those
Of
regions.
course, of course, from Latin. They come from Latin. So it's really how Latin changed over time in the different parts of Italy. That's why they are very important. And we also have, if you think about some dialects in Italy, Napoletano, for example, Veneto, there is all the cultural background. Some writers wrote in those languages. Think about the music, for example,
Yeah.
Napoletana, musica napoletana. That's huge. That's so important. So I would encourage that. It's something that we should not lose over
Oh,
time.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. And it's no different to, he say, in Australia, they speak,
Hmm.
the English we speak in Australia is
Yeah.
different to the English they speak in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So it's, well known that they're more proper. Here it's a little bit more of a slang type. So it's really no difference to, say, Roma and Sicilia or
Of
Milano and
course.
Calabria or Napoli and all that. So it
And
happens
that's the
everywhere.
beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So um, my question I wanted to, because it's customized,
Yeah.
what you do. So where are most of you talked about the age groups? Where are most of your students? Let's call them students to learn.
Sure. Of course.
Whereabouts are they from? Is it particular countries or any regions?
Well, many come from the US, so many are Americans. I work a lot with them, and usually they are middle-aged professionals, but also retirees. So there are some people who decide to come to Italy, they buy a house, and then they understand that it is difficult to have deep connections with people, and you need the language. That's why it is so important. So I work mainly with people who are 50 plus, let's say, and they really want, the main reason why people want to learn the language is because they want to connect with others. They want to have deep relationships with others, and you need the language. So you need to understand the nuances in the Italian language, and that's what we do. And then each person is different. Sometimes some of them, not many, I have to say, they need Italian for work purposes. So if they are professionals, so we work on that. But mainly what they need is just the Italian that you use every day when you are with people, when you want to tell something about your past or interact with people. So that's what we do, especially because, as I was saying before, one of the main issues is that people are afraid to speak. So that's
Right.
a huge component. That's a huge component. And I understand it. It's not easy. It's there is a quote that I love that says that accent is a sign of bravery. It is,
Mhm.
because you have to be brave in order to speak another language, and
Oh,
just to accept that what you say might not be perfect, and that's okay. I
yeah,
always say my English is proficient, but it's not perfect. And I know that, but I can talk to you. I can connect. I can understand what you say about your life, your work, and that's amazing. Language should open doors, not close them.
yeah. And by the way,
So,
Elisabetta, your English is fantastic,
oh, thank you so
right?
much.
You know what I've noticed, and maybe you can answer this question.
Yeah,
As I said, my Italian is okay. I'll survive. Sometimes there are words that I hear that have come out
yeah,
of Italy or on the radio, on the paper, whatever
yeah.
television, and I'm going, I've never heard that word before. What
Oh,
does
it
it mean?
happens all the time.
So I tell
Languages evolve. So it's not the same language. 30 years ago, we spoke in a different way. For example, nowadays, lei is less used than in the past. And there are some words that comes from other languages. For example, there are many expressions in Italian right now that come from English. That's normal. Languages evolve as people evolve, and languages just are reflect what people say depending on how the life is. So, as I'm telling you, in Italian, for example, instead of saying support to support somebody, we use the English language for that many times. And it happens a lot.
yeah,
So, yes, that's true. Things change and there are new words. Even, I mean, even if I am a Italian is my mother tongue, it happens to me. When I read something, this morning it happened. I saw something, it was an expression in the dialetto napoletano, so
mhm,
from Naples. I've never heard of that. And I said, what's that? Let me check it out.
yeah, yeah,
So it's a new way of saying things, and I was not aware. And I live in Italy. I am here. So that's completely normal. And that's the beauty of it.
yeah. And my friends and family, when we talk, they'll occasionally go, "Yes, I'm having a this weekend," or "Okay." They'll drop it
Exact. I
like that,
know.
and then
Yeah.
I go, "Oh, should I respond in English?" And then they won't understand the English. But just talking about the Napolitano language dialect,
Yeah.
there's a very popular song out at the moment. I forget his name, um, and it's a very poppy song. And he was going to release this. This is the story of he was going to release the song in Italian because he didn't believe that the Italian general community and the rest of the world would like the Napolitana version, right? His son convinced him to throw in verses of Napolitano language and dialect. It is the probably the most listened Italian song in the world today.
That's
So
beautiful.
he's a lot older than his son, obviously, but the fear is that a fear of not going with your dialect because of what people are going to say, or is it just the way he was brought up to say, I need to speak the proper Italian or so-called proper Italian?
Well, it happened a few years ago, by the way. A young rapper from Naples, he went to Sanremo and he sang in dialect, and it
Yep.
was a huge success as well.
Right.
So remember, we use dialect expressions in other dialects as well as a fun way of using the language. I do that all the time, by the
Right.
way. So it's nice. It's something peculiar. It's something that it says, oh, that person is really Italian. We understand that. There are some expressions that you can say only in one dialect, for example. Essere una capa tosta, for
Yeah.
example, when you have, uh,
Yeah.
we
Hard
say
head, a
that,
hard
capa
head. Yeah.
tosta. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. We say that, and it's beautiful. So well done for that singer.
Yeah. No,
It was a good
well,
idea.
glad that he listened to his son, and
Yes, exactly.
it's a very big song now. But going back to yourself, Elisabetta,
Yeah.
where were you born? Where did you grow up? You always grew up in Italy? Did you live anywhere
Yes.
else?
Yes, in Italy, in the north of Italy, I don't know if you know Trento. Trento
See,
is the city I come from. So
right.
it's in the northern part of Italy, 1 hour away from Verona. It's a small city, very peaceful, very calm, surrounded by mountains. It's the perfect place for people who love outdoor sports like cycling or hiking or skiing. Many people come here from other parts of Italy, especially in winter for what we called Semana Bianca.
Mm.
Settimana Bianca. Settimana Bianca is that week, white week, we call it, when people
White
go and
Christmas.
just ski. And also in the summer, because
Right.
it's not too hot here and the nature is really beautiful.
Yeah.
So this is, and right now I live in Trento. I still live in
Beautiful.
Trento, but
Yeah.
I lived in Spain for 12 years. So I went there during my university. I stayed there. And I also lived in the United States 1 year when I was 15 years old, very, very young. And I moved there for 1 year as a study abroad student. And I think that's the reason why I do what I do today, because when I went there, I felt like an outsider.
Mm.
I barely spoke English. It was really, really challenging, trust me. And I come from a very small town, a small village, and I went to this huge high school in New Jersey. And I could not understand what people were saying. So I
Yeah.
struggled a lot. That's why I understand how complicated it is for people who decide to come here to Italy to live here,
Yeah.
especially if they move and they decide to have their life here. I understand the struggles. And that's why I think my empathy is so high because I lived that twice. Once when I moved to the US when I was 15 years old, and then when I moved to Spain. But I have to say that I did it in a different way because the first time I went and my knowledge was very, very basic when I went to the US. The second time, I prepared. And that's what I think people should do that
Yeah.
before going to another country. I really, really prepared before I studied the Spanish language a lot. And I went there, when I went there, I was prepared. Yeah.
Yeah. And on our say a different language
Oh, can
or
I tell
not?
you that? Well, it helps you at the very beginning because, as you said, you understand a lot. But when it comes to speak, well, it's a different thing
Yeah.
because you see, Spanish and Italian are so close that you have a huge interference between the two languages. So, what ends up happening most of the time is that people speak Itagnol, which
Mm.
is Italian
And
and
Spanish.
Spanish together. Yes, I have many clients who speak Spanish, and I really can help them a lot because I know what the struggles are. I know the differences. Even before they speak, I already know what the errors or the difficulties are going to be because those languages are very, very close. So at the very beginning, when you have some two languages who are so close, it helps a lot with the comprehension. But when you want to have a um, good level in the language, you want accuracy, that's a different story. And you really have to learn how to separate the two languages in your brain. So you have to find what works for you in order to separate them. I can tell you, I've met many people in my life, many Spanish speakers, and that's difficult to find somebody who can really speak good Italian. And the same goes for Italians. An Italian who speaks very good Spanish is hard because
Right.
the two languages are so close. It seems impossible. I remember once when I used to work in Spain, they did like a test at the local school, and they tested the vocabulary that people knew in the other language. It's incredible, but people who learned, Spanish speakers who learned um, German, they knew more words correctly than in Italian.
Right. Okay.
That's incredible. Because,
Yeah.
for example, marmellata in Italian is mermelada in
Mhm.
Spanish. So a Spanish speaker doesn't bother a lot because it's almost the same. So they might end up saying mermelata, mermalata, which is not correct. It's very close, but it's not.
Yeah.
So it seems strange, but it's harder if you want to really master the language.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of work as well. When I last came to Italy and with my friends and family, they told me that there's is it 8 hours a week compulsory English learning? Is that still something in Italy? Um,
Oh,
because we don't have the same, say, in Australia, or I'm assuming in Canada and America, where one day, like I said to you, one day a week, it was 3 hours.
yeah.
But is English a language that is taught in?
Required.
Yeah.
Yes, we learn languages. Well, I learned German, by the way, as well when I was a little girl. When I went to the elementary school, it was German because I live close to Germany in the north of Italy. In some other parts, for example, Torino, they learn French as well, and now also English. And when you go to the university, you need at least two foreign languages at a B1 level, which is intermediate level in that language. So you have to prove that you have that level. In fact, when I went to the university, I decided to um, mm, certificate my level in English, and then I decided with Spanish because I said, "Oh my God, the German. No, I prefer Spanish," and that's when I started. Yes, so it's not compulsory in the school system in Australia
No,
to have
no, no,
another.
no,
Really?
no, it's not.
Oh,
And when I went to
really?
school, it was really just 3 hours, 2 hours on a weekend on a Saturday.
Okay. Yeah.
And yes, and I think I explained to you my experience was that the teacher was from Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to answer, like when you're reading from the script,
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
When you're writing, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Reading's fine. But when you go off the top and just start, you'll get me anyway, 9 out of the 10 words in Italian. And then there's a little dialect calabrese coming out there.
Of course, why not?
So which I understand now is that was my experience, not for everybody. Not
Sure.
everybody has that experience, but um as far as Italy itself, I mean, this is probably a history lesson or something, but how did all these different languages slash dialects come about? And I know there was a unification in 1860s, 1860.
Yeah.
Was Italian the language spoken before that, or was it
Oh,
after?
that's a good question because when Italy was unified, people were dialect speakers. Let me tell you the story of my mom so you can understand. So my mom is she's almost 84 years old.
Mhm.
When she went to school, the first day, she was 6 years old. She used to live in a small village, and her parents, my grandparents, used to speak the local dialect. When she went to school, she started to cry because when she came back home, because she could not understand the language. For her, it was like as a foreign language, as if people were speaking, I don't know, German or Turkish or something else. So it was really, really hard for her. And for many Italians, this was the situation when Italy was unified at the end
Right.
of the other century. So people started using Italian, and Italian became the language of the whole peninsula
Yeah.
through the television. Is
Right.
so important, television in Italy, because it unified two things were very important: television and leva militare, when people had to go for 1 year and
Yeah.
serve the military. So people from the north and the south, they had to communicate. And that's why the Italian language, the standard Italian language, unified that and helped. So now people, almost everyone nowadays, people speak the standard Italian. But there are many people who really grow up, even nowadays, with the dialect as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely.
it depends on where you live. In Veneto, as we mentioned before, in Naples, for example, in other parts of Italy, the local language is so important. So they learn that as well at home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the reason why my mom and my father, they decided to speak only standard Italian with my brother, my sister, and I, because she remembered the struggle when she went to school and she said, oh, no, 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 I want her to speak the standard Italian. That's the reason why. And in fact, I understand the local dialect. I understand everything. But if I try to speak, people laugh because I have
Yeah.
an accent.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not my native language. Can you believe it? And I've
Yeah.
heard that since that, I mean, that I was born. Always I've
Yeah.
done that, but still, they can tell, oh, it's not your native language.
Oh, absolutely. Even with when I come to Italy and speak with my friends, and there'll be one pronunciation or one syllable that they go, you don't, you don't speak it from here. But the story about your mum, that happened to me because I my first language is Italian,
Really?
right? And they
Okay,
actually
okay,
they made me repeat a year here in Australia
okay,
because
okay,
they felt my English wasn't up to a level to go to the
okay.
next year, right?
Mm-hmm,
So I had
mm-hmm,
to repeat
mm-hmm.
because my only language was the dialect
Sure.
and the Italian mixed, right?
Okay,
So I
okay,
understand
sure,
exactly
sure.
where that happens. So but with certain parts of Italy, I've been told, I haven't experienced it, like in say I'm from the Calabria region,
Mm-hmm,
there are
mm-hmm.
still pockets, there are pockets of a small town that speaks in the Greek language.
Yes, that's true. That's, for example, in Calabria, La Magna Grecia. Yes, that's true. Until 1950s, those villages were not connected, so you could not go there by car, and the language kept of being used as it was. And in Calabria, for example, there are some parts in which they speak Albanian. There
Right.
is an important, yes, yes, there are. I don't know if you are familiar with that. I don't know
No.
if they are close of, okay. There is Carmine Abate. He's a great writer, Italian writer. He's from there. He decided to move, and now he lives here in Trentino. And he comes from that part of Italy in which the language was Albanian.
Right.
I suppose it's not the perfect Albanian, probably is one version of the language. And yes, it's still it was used. So
Used,
yes,
yeah.
that's right. That's right. And that's incredible. And you see, when you think about that, for example, I suppose the dialect that you speak right now, and the language, the local language of Calabria, of your parents, probably is very different from the language that people speak in that part of Italy today, because
Yeah.
it
Oh,
did
yeah.
not change. because you keep that version of the
Mm.
language that did not change for many years. In fact, when people want to study the old version of a dialect, they speak with people who moved to another country and
Yeah.
they want to see how they use the language.
Yeah. And Sicily would have the same sort of language influences from other countries as well. Is that right?
Yes, of course, of course.
Yeah. And just
So
a,
each part of Italy, because remember, Italy is a country with many people came to Italy from all around the world. From they spoke French, they spoke Spanish, they spoke Arabic, so the Arabic language. So all that left some consequences.
yeah, yeah,
So that's why we have many languages and also many different dishes all around Italy. That's
yeah,
precisely the reason why we have that. That's so rich, the Italian
yeah.
cuisine.
And that's why it's so popular. But when you lived in for the year in the US
Yep, New
in
Jersey.
New Jersey, um,
hmm
the Italian American language is a different language that evolved on its own, like the Italian Australian language. How did you find? I know it would have been. You said it was tough. You didn't understand, but it is a different language altogether they've created because they had to assimilate and mix a few things that they needed just to survive in a new country. How was that experience for you?
Well, I lived in a Sicilian family.
Right.
I
Okay.
lived with them. And they spoke Italian. It was mainly the Sicilian version of Italian, the Sicilian dialect. I could communicate with them. Well, the grandparents used to speak Italian, not the parents. And their children, they didn't know Italian. So
Right.
that's why they wanted an Italian person to go there and stay with them and just have some Italian at home with them.
Yeah.
So, but I really don't remember. I remember I saw many people from Italy. Um, they were living there. I could understand them and I could recognize that their English was not proper. English. I could
Right.
hear it. So I remember and I said, okay, that's the Italian accent probably. But remember, I could not speak English at the time, so
Yeah.
I was learning as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got a little bit of because I grew up in an English country, so I understand the English. And when you hear other countries, the way they have their Italian and English mix, let's call it that, it evolved. Even like the food evolves different. It's a different
Exactly. Yeah.
menu they have there. And in Australia, we're fortunate because we're very close to the Italian menu. Let's call it the menu of the
hmm
Italian food. So if you come to
Yeah.
Australia, you're pretty much going to get the same as what you're going to get in Italy. A
Really,
little bit,
really.
some changes, but I believe in the US, there's different menus that are being created over the
Oh,
years.
yes, exactly. Because sometimes my clients they say, "Oh, that's an Italian dish," and I say, "Oh, I've never heard of that." That's something different. So
It's an
it's true.
Italian American
It's
dish.
true. Yes, it's Italian American. And what's really for me, being Italian from Italy, when they say I am Italian American, what struck me every time is that they don't speak the language.
Right.
So they define themselves as Italian American, and it is weird for me that um, they call themselves Italian American, but they don't speak the language.
Yeah.
And I really like when I work with people from there who decide to learn the language and they say, "Oh, really, I want," because it's part of my identity puzzle. Language is a huge piece. And sometimes maybe at 70 or 80, they say, "Now it's time. Now I have the time. I want to commit and I want to do it." And
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I guess like for the in their sort of defense there for the Italian Americans, they have they're five or six, seven generation deep, right? So they still feel the connection with, say, their great grandparents, but they have learnt this mix of language all the way through. But inside, I think some of the Italian Australians, we're two or three generations, but the young kids will always feel that connection and say, I'm Italian, right?
Exactly. And they
Right.
feel it so, and that's amazing. I love that because I can see the love they have for Italy. And that's a shame because sometimes they say, you know what happened is our parents or grandparents, they didn't want us to feel like foreigners.
Yeah.
That's why they decided, and I understand that's the same thing that my mom did. It's a shame, but I understand that it's a way to protect and say, oh no, you're going to be American and not an immigrant from another country. So I understand it. And that's why I love when I can help and just jump in and say, okay, I will help you with that part of you.
So how do you help all these people, Elizabeth? The 38,000 plus. I know that social YouTube and online, it's
Exactly.
easy,
That's,
but how
yeah.
does it work? Do you have like a big class? I know you said you do one-on-one custom training,
Exactly. I
but
do both. Yeah,
right,
I do one-on-one and also team language coaching with small groups because
right,
huge classes, I cannot focus on each
yeah,
person. You cannot speak, I cannot correct. And that's important because you need feedback. You need to know what you're saying is right or there is a better way to say that. So I work with small, maximum 6 learners together. Sometimes they come from different countries, and we work online. And also, I work on one-on-one. So with a specific client, and I am there. And as I told you, we decide what to do based on their learning style, on their level, on their goals. So this is like when you go to a tailor and you say, I want a dress that fits exactly my body, which has to be a fit for me, just for me. So
yeah.
that's what I do it. And then every day I publish something on LinkedIn. I publish many quizzes about the Italian language. People love them because they can learn something quickly every day. So I do polls twice a week and then I just share what I learn. I share also some motivation because sometimes people are really um, certain that it's impossible for them to learn the language. And sometimes that's because they met somebody who told them, oh, you are not a good language learner, just don't do it. And I say, no, that person was not right. Probably it was the method that didn't work for you because simply it was not there's something made for you. So how the way you learn, the way
Yeah.
that's best for you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mentioned the 1 year that I did to learn Italian. But then I actually decided to, for I think for a year or so, a long period of time, is just listen. Yes, I had to speak English in my work and talk to people, but in my own personal time, it was only Italian radio, Italian newspaper, and Italian news. So I immersed myself in that. But I've got a bit of advantage because I grew up listening to it. Do you think those sort of approaches make a difference? Like listening, you mentioned television before, listening to Italian music. I know a lot of younger kids pick up a lot of stuff from listening to these songs.
Sure, sure, absolutely. That's crucial, I would say. You cannot expect to learn a language with one session per week with somebody, with a tutor, teacher, or coach. It's not enough. You
Hmm.
have to immerse yourself, as you said. Nowadays, you have everything. You can learn a language. You have so many things that you can listen to, that you can read, everything. So you have to immerse yourself. There are two things that we have to do when we learn a language. There is accuracy, so we need grammar structures if you want to speak proper Italian in this case. But we also need fluency. And the fluency comes when you are exposed to the language for many, many, many hours. You have
Yeah.
to bombard your brain with the language. And what happens? in many cases is that people use the traditional method. They do drill exercises. Those are fine. It's beautiful, but it's not enough
Yeah.
because then you know exactly how the subjunctive works, how passato prossimo works. But when you come to Italy and people say, ciao, come va? You freeze. You have no idea how to answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just know rules. And rules are fine. It's great. You need accuracy. I am a big advocate for accuracy. It's
Yeah.
important. But really, what you need is flow. And you go into the flow and into the fluency, exposing yourself. So that's a huge piece, one of the most important part, I would say. So well done, Biagio. That's the
Yeah.
way
Well,
forward.
well, I tried. I tried. So, but as we mentioned, I've spoken to you before. When you're not in amongst it, you're in a country where they all speak English, even the Italians, right? It takes a little bit of time for the likes of me to kick in. So, like you were saying, the time I've worked it out
Sure,
a few hours for me, and I'll start to get into as long as I don't have. See, English is a big distraction for me. If I'm in a
sure.
room with, say, yourself, we speak Italian, then there's two
Mm-hmm,
people in English,
mm-hmm,
the mind is going, okay, which way I'm going to go, right?
mm-hmm.
So, but when it's all Italian or all English, it's okay. But with before I let you go, because I know you're really busy, um,
Thank you.
with your goals for this, let's call it project, this passion, this vision to help individuals to learn Italian and do it in a customized way, which we know that I've had a bit of experience in the disability side, and there's new learning methods now. I forget, is it called the Padana or something like that, where they
Mm,
teach. There's a special teaching method for people with a disability that can't have
mm-hmm.
speak properly or have difficulty.
Yep.
So the customization side of things is something that definitely makes sense.
I always say that I help people learn the language because I want them to feel at home in Italy. My mission is really to make sure that language is never a barrier. I want people to feel at home, to know that they can communicate, they can have really deep connection with others, they can have deep relationships. And yes, I use AI as
Hmm.
artisanal intelligence. So I really want to craft something unique for
Yeah.
each person. So it's not something that it's the same one size fits all.
Hmm.
No, I really want to work with a person and help that person achieve their goals. That's very important to me. Yeah.
And just the final question, how
Yeah.
how long generally does it take to have someone be comfortable in the Italian language, say from scratch, from knowing nothing? How rough
It,
does it change for different people? Different?
Exactly. That's very subjective, I would say. It
Mhm.
depends. As I told you, I've worked with people who start from scratch, and it really depends. Um, there are many factors involved, and one of them is how much you expose yourself
Yeah.
to the language. But mostly, I work with people who already know something, and really what stops them is many times their mindset.
Yeah. Is it
So
a
thinking
fear?
that, yes, fear of
Yeah.
speaking. Many
Yeah.
people have this huge fear. So the mindset game, not many people talk about that in language learning, but it's the first part. It's
Yeah.
the most important part. Because if you don't believe in yourself, you think it's not possible, you are not going to take the actions that you need. And this then has results. The results come from what you believe that it's possible. So that's a big component of this as well. So yes, the first step is not to be afraid, just be prepared because when you learn a language, you have to make mistakes. That's what I say to people. You have to, because if you don't make mistakes, it means that you don't speak. You're not doing the work.
And you
So
don't
you're
learn.
not exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's if you want to learn, you have to make mistakes and just be prepared for that. That's a long journey, and that's the beauty. It doesn't end, even if that's your mother tongue.
Hmm.
Because if I think about myself, how much do I learn Italian? I would say 90%. It's not 100%. Every single day I learn new things. So imagine when it's a foreign language, it's
Yeah.
even more. So we have to be comfortable with that, I would say.
No, that's great advice. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, Elisabetta, what is the best way to reach out to you and get some help, some advice? Because, obviously we have listeners from everywhere, and
Sure.
especially in a similar situation to me, where, although I was born in Italy and grew up in Australia, there are many Italo-Americans, Italo-Canadese, Italo-Australians, even Argentina, whatever. Can they reach you?
Probably the best way is on LinkedIn. It's the easiest way. You can just send me a DM. So Elisabetta Maccani on LinkedIn. And I have also a YouTube channel, the same, Elisabetta Maccani, language coach on YouTube. You can find me there, or you can just send me an email, info@elisabettamacani.com.
Right.
So I
And
am there.
I think you got a web page as well, don't you?
Yes, of course, of
Yeah.
course. ElisabettaMaccani.com.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And we'll put all that into the little captions when we post
Thank you.
the
Thank you so
interview.
much, Biagio.
So, no, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's very early there. And yeah, but I think, these sort of things are very important because, you see a lot of it now on social media. Let's move to Italy, buy a house for $1, €1. But it's not
Yes,
it's
that's
not
true.
as easy as that, right?
No, it's not that easy. And especially because when you are there, if you buy something, you want to connect with people, you want to have a relationship. So you need the language as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, congratulations, Elisabetta, with all the work you're doing
Thank you.
with
Thank you.
helping
Thank you,
people
Biagio.
and making a big difference. And if anything we can help you with anytime, reach out. We'll have a chat again down the track, see how it's going.
Thanks.
And
Thanks again.
and thank you again for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks for having me again.
The
It was a
pleasure.
pleasure.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Elizabeth. Ciao.